What's up, book lovers? Welcome to Bookzeal. Today we're diving into the book The Playbook by Mike Bellafiore. All right, let's get started. Chapter 1. The Playbook. There's this moment in trading that nobody warns you about. It hits quietly, almost like someone turning down the volume on the world. You're staring at the screen, charts flickering, and you realize you don't actually know what you're supposed to be looking for. Not really. You're reacting, guessing, hoping. And hope is a terrible trading strategy. Most people never admit that part. They jump in thinking the market will reward their confidence, or their hustle, or their optimism. But the market doesn't care about any of that. It only cares about what you can see and what you can prove. And that's where the playbook comes in. It's not just a collection of trades. It's more like a mirror that finally tells the truth. When you first hear the word playbook, it sounds clean, organized, almost athletic. But in reality, it usually starts as a mess, a messy folder, a messy process, a messy brain. It's you trying to make sense of hundreds of tiny moments that pass so fast you barely notice them, until one day, something clicks. You watch a setup unfold and your mind goes, "Wait, I've seen this before." That's when you realize your playbook is teaching you how to think, not like a gambler, but like a professional. There's this young trader I remember. Let's call him Mark. Brilliant guy, fast learner, but he traded like he had something to prove. Every chart looked like an invitation to show the market who he was. And the market, well, it humbled him the way the market humbles everyone who walks in with ego instead of structure. After a string of rough days, he did something most new traders never do. He stopped. He slowed down. He asked a question most people avoid. What am I actually good at? That question changed everything. He started collecting moments, not wins, moments. The times when the setup felt clear, when his read made sense, when the trade wasn't emotional but logical. He'd screenshot them, write a sentence or two, save them. At first, it felt small, almost pointless. But day after day, the pile grew, the playbook grew. And slowly, he wasn't trading the whole market anymore. He was only trading himself, his strengths, his edges, his patterns. The things that worked for him, not for the guy next to him. There's something strangely comforting about that shift. You stop chasing noise and start listening to your own data. You stop feeling lost, and there's this quiet confidence that builds. The kind that doesn't need hype or fire or some motivational speech to function. It's the confidence that comes from seeing the same winning pattern play out 5, 10, 20 times. Professional traders don't rely on inspiration. They rely on repetition. Somewhere along the way, you also notice a strange little truth. The playbook isn't really about trading. It's about identity. It forces you to accept that you're not supposed to be great at everything. Nobody is. You're supposed to be great at something. One thing, maybe two. And you get there by being honest about who you actually are when the pressure hits. You know that moment when you're trying to look confident on the outside, but inside you're scrambling? Everyone has that moment. But the playbook reduces it. It gives you something solid to hold when everything else feels uncertain. And in the market, certainty is a rare luxury. At some point, the traders who make it realize the playbook isn't optional. It's the foundation. Every chart you study, every trade you review, every pattern you recognize gets sharper. And without even noticing it, you start moving differently. You wait more, you judge less. You see more. You know what deserves your money and what doesn't. The noise gets quieter. The mistakes get smaller, and something in you steadies. Almost like you stop trying to prove yourself and start trying to understand yourself. That's when trading stops being chaos and starts feeling like craft. Chapter 2. Trade like a shark. There's a strange thing that happens when you watch a real shark move. It doesn't rush, it doesn't flinch, it doesn't panic because something splashes nearby. It just circles, waits, studies, and then strikes only when the odds are almost insulting. And the more you trade, the more you realize the market rewards that kind of patience, not the frantic energy most people bring to the screen. A lot of new traders think being aggressive means pressing buttons fast, but real aggression in trading is restraint. It's refusing to jump just because your mind is restless. It's the discipline of not caring about the last trade or the next one, only the right one. And that mindset is uncomfortable, because it forces you to admit how often your decisions come from anxiety, not intention. I knew a trader who used to fire off 20 trades a day. His P&L looked like a heartbeat monitor. Up, down, flatline. He'd walk around talking about momentum and conviction, but you could see it in his eyes. He wasn't trading like a shark. He was trading like someone being chased. The market was the predator, not him. And the worst part? He didn't even notice it. One morning, after a particularly rough week, he sat down and watched recording after recording of his own screen. It was almost painful. You could see the exact second he'd enter out of fear of missing out. The moment he'd bail too early because a tiny red candle scared him. The way he'd widen his stop just because the loss felt personal. Somewhere in that long, quiet review, he saw himself clearly. The market wasn't the enemy. His impulses were. There's something powerful about that realization. When you stop blaming the candles and start studying your reactions, you shift from victim to observer. Suddenly, you're not fighting the market, you're learning its rhythm. A shark doesn't try to control the ocean. It adapts to it. Trading like a shark means stepping into a state where you don't need every opportunity. You only need the ones with teeth, the ones you've studied, the ones that match your playbook so closely that your brain relaxes instead of tensing up. It's strange, but the best trades often feel boring at the start. No adrenaline, no fireworks, just calm recognition. There's also a darker side to shark-like trading that people rarely talk about, knowing when to do nothing. That silence can feel unbearable. You see moves happening, money flying, people bragging, and you're just watching, waiting. It feels almost embarrassing, like you're sitting out of a game everyone else is playing. But that's exactly why sharks survive. They don't confuse movement with progress. You know those days when the market feels like a room full of people yelling different directions at you? That's the exact moment when the shark mindset matters most. Instead of running toward every shout, you slow down, you breathe, you scan. You look for the pattern you trust, and if it's not there, you remain still. The more still you can be in chaos, the more control you gain over your own mind. And trading, at its core, is a mind game long before it's a money game. At some point, the trader who used to fire off 20 trades learned the beauty of selective aggression. He went from 20 trades to 7 to 3, sometimes even 1. His P&L smoothed out, his stress dropped. And the funniest part? People started asking him what new strategy he found. But he didn't find anything. He just removed everything that made him flinch. Trading like a shark isn't about being fearless. It's about being patient enough to wait until fear has no say in the decision. And when you reach that place, the market starts to feel less like a storm and more like water you can finally navigate. Chapter 3. The day-night capital almost fell. Some days in the market feel ordinary. And then there are days that split time in half. Days when the screens go quiet in a way that feels wrong. Days when even the veteran traders sit up straighter, sensing something is shifting beneath the surface. That's what the morning felt like when night capital started unraveling. Not loud, not dramatic, just off. The kind of off that makes your stomach tighten before your mind understands why. At first, nobody really grasped what was happening. A few weird prints, odd moves, a stock behaving like it forgot the laws of physics. Traders looked around the room with that silent, "Are you seeing this too?" expression. And slowly, the realization hit everyone. This wasn't a glitch. This was a meltdown happening in real time. Imagine sitting there, watching a firm worth billions bleed from an invisible wound. Orders firing like a machine possessed. A runaway algorithm turning a normal morning into chaos. That's the thing about markets. When they break, they don't crack politely. They shatter. There was a young trader on the desk who later said the strangest part wasn't the volatility. It was how quiet the room got. No jokes, no chatter, just focus. Pure, sharpened focus. And underneath it all, something else. A sense of responsibility. Because when a giant collapses, the shock doesn't stay contained. It ripples. Through stocks, through traders, through confidence. You could almost feel the market holding its breath. And in moments like that, something raw gets exposed. The myth that the market is stable, predictable, controlled, it evaporates. What you're left with is the truth. This world runs on razor-thin systems, human judgment, and the hope that the wrong line of code never fires at the wrong time. But here's the part that stayed with traders long after that day ended. In the middle of the chaos, the best performers didn't panic. They didn't freeze. They didn't try to be heroes. They did something far more grounded. They followed their process. They traded smaller, they traded slower. They treated the market like a shaken animal, unpredictable, powerful, dangerous. There was one guy calm as a winter lake who closed his laptop halfway through the meltdown. Not because he was quitting, because he knew his emotions were louder than his logic. That move saved him from making the kind of mistake that ends careers. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do in the market is step back before fear starts making decisions for you. And then, in the afternoon, as suddenly as it began, the storm eased. People finally exhaled. You could see it in their shoulders, that quiet shock of realizing how close the market came to a full collapse. Knight Capital didn't just lose money, it lost its future. And every trader watching understood a truth they'd never forget. If a giant can fall in minutes, so can anyone who stops respecting risk. There's a moment after a scare like that when everything feels different. Charts look sharper, risk feels heavier, your ego feels smaller, and somewhere inside, a voice gets clearer. You're not here to predict the market's mood. You're here to survive it. That day didn't teach traders how to trade. It taught them why they needed discipline, long before they needed courage. Chapter 4. 2. How good can you be? There's a question that sits quietly in the background of every trading journey. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It just lingers there, like a reflection you keep catching in a window but never fully face. How good can you actually be? Not compared to some legend on Twitter. Not compared to the guy sitting 2 desks away. Compared to you. The real you. The disciplined you. The version of you that shows up when fear stops running the show. Most people never really explore that question. They're too busy chasing someone else's highlight reel. But there was this trader called 2, a guy who made that question his compass. Not in an arrogant way, more in a quiet, almost stubborn way. He didn't come into trading with raw talent spilling out of him. Actually, he struggled a lot. He took losses that made him question whether he even belonged in the room. And yet, every time doubt tried to push him out, he'd sit down, take a breath, and ask himself the same thing. How good can I be if I stop getting in my own way? It wasn't a motivational slogan for him. It was a challenge, a personal dare. T.O. wasn't the fastest learner, but he was relentless. He'd watch recordings long after everyone left. He'd break down charts until his screen looked like a crime board, not because he was obsessed with the market, but because he was obsessed with understanding himself inside the market. His strengths, his blind spots, his triggers, the subtle moments when emotion disguised itself as intuition. There was this day when he journaled a single trade for almost 4 hours. Not because it was a big win, it was a small, messy loser. But in that loss, he found something important, a tiny hesitation he hadn't noticed before. A moment where he doubted what he knew. He wrote that hesitation down like it was a code he needed to crack. And over time, he did. That's the thing about the traders who rise quietly. They don't waste energy pretending to be perfect. They study their imperfections like data points. You know that strange feeling when you realize you're capable of more than you've ever allowed yourself to believe? It's exciting. And also a little scary. Because once you admit that better is possible, you can't hide behind excuses anymore. T.O. learned that early. And the moment he stopped defending his flaws, he started outgrowing them. There was a soft shift in him, something you couldn't see on a chart, but you could feel in the way he approached the screen. He wasn't trading for approval. He wasn't trading for adrenaline. He was trading to test the edge of his own potential. And that kind of focus changes the energy around you. It makes you quieter, sharper, more intentional. At some point, he hit a stretch where everything clicked. Not perfectly trading never gives perfection, but consistently. The wins weren't the impressive part. The emotional stability was. He stayed the same on green days and red days. Calm, centered, almost annoyingly grounded. And people would look at him thinking he'd unlocked some secret. But he hadn't. He just stopped trying to be someone else and leaned deeper into who he could become. There's a moment in every trader's journey where you feel this little tremor inside, a mix of fear and excitement, like you're standing on the edge of a higher version of yourself. Most people step back. A few step forward. 2 stepped forward. And that's why his story sticks. Because it wasn't about talent. It was about willingness. The willingness to look in the mirror and ask the uncomfortable question and then actually chase the answer. Somewhere in that chase, you learn a truth that stays with you. Your potential isn't a destination, it's a direction. And the moment you start walking toward it, really walking, the market stops being a battlefield and becomes something else. A place where you meet the best version of yourself, one decision at a time. Chapter 5. Follow the trading path of Pippen. There's something almost comforting about watching someone who isn't loud, isn't flashy, isn't chasing the spotlight, but still ends up becoming essential. That was Pippen. The kind of trader who didn't walk into the room trying to impress anyone and somehow impressed everyone anyway. Not because he was the most gifted, but because he took a path most traders avoid. The slow, patient climb. He didn't rush his evolution. He didn't pretend he was ready for things he wasn't. He just kept showing up, one layer at a time, like someone quietly building a staircase while everyone else was searching for an elevator. Most traders walk in wanting to be the star player by Friday. Pippen walked in wanting to understand one thing deeply by Friday, and then another the week after, and another the week after that. It gave him this grounded presence, like a guy who wasn't trying to outrun time, just trying to use it well. There's a real power in that mindset, but it's subtle, almost invisible, until one day it isn't. I remember this moment during a volatile session. The whole desk was buzzing, screens lighting up, people shifting in their chairs. That nervous energy you get when markets start moving a little too fast. And in the middle of all that noise, Pippen was calm. Not calm in a robotic, emotionless way. Calm like someone who knew exactly what he was looking for and wasn't willing to settle for anything else. When a setup finally matched his criteria, he didn't pounce. He eased in, measured, controlled, thoughtful. You could see it in his posture. No rush, no fear, no ego, just alignment. He treated the trade like a conversation, not a race. And because of that, he managed it beautifully. He didn't squeeze it for drama. He didn't force extra size. He didn't get greedy. He executed with this clean, almost surgical discipline. The room noticed. It was one of those moments that make you think, okay, something in him leveled up. But here's the part most people misunderstand. Pippen didn't get good because he was naturally calm. He got good because he embraced being a work in progress. He wasn't ashamed of learning. He wasn't embarrassed to ask questions. He didn't pretend he understood something he didn't. He'd spend hours reviewing tape not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He liked the grind, or maybe he liked what the grind was turning him into. And the path he followed, that slow, intentional, piece-by-piece path, ended up becoming his superpower. It protected him from the emotional traps that swallow new traders. The rush to size up too fast, the pressure to prove yourself, the obsession with finding shortcuts. Pippen didn't chase shortcuts. He built foundations, the kind of foundations that survive storms. You know that quiet moment when you realize the person who seemed ordinary actually built something extraordinary while nobody was watching? That's what happened with Pippen. One day, he was the guy asking questions, and the next, he was the one people were asking. Not because he spoke the loudest, but because he understood the deepest. Somewhere along his journey, he stopped comparing himself to others. He stopped worrying about who was ahead or behind. He just kept doing the small things well, the review, the journaling, the patience, the discipline. And all those small things added up. They always do, just not immediately. That's the hidden truth Pippen teaches you. Growth in trading isn't linear. It's layered. It builds slowly. And then one day, it breaks through all at once. Like a shift you didn't see happening until you're standing inside it. Following the trading path of Pippen isn't about copying his style. It's about embracing the kind of steady improvement that doesn't look impressive in the moment, but changes everything over time. Chapter 6. Special Projects. Get ready to trade pro. Every trader has that moment when they feel the gap, the space between where they are and where they wish they were. It's not dramatic. It's not painful. It's just this quiet awareness that your current toolkit won't carry you much further. That's where special projects come in. They show up when you're ready to stop trading like a hobbyist and start thinking like someone who belongs in the big leagues. Special projects aren't about doing more. They're about doing deeper. The kind of work nobody asks you to do, but everyone can feel once you've done it. There was a trader on the desk who would take on these little missions for himself. Nobody assigned them. He didn't even talk about them. He'd pick one thing, one very specific skill, and he'd go all in on it for weeks. Sometimes it was learning how a sector reacts to news. Sometimes it was mastering a single setup until he could trade it half asleep. Sometimes it was studying tape until he could almost predict the next prints. He treated each project like a transformation, not a task. You could almost see the shift happening in real time. His trading stopped feeling scattered and started feeling intentional. like he wasn't just participating in the market anymore. He was preparing for it. Most traders wait for improvement to show up on its own, but the ones who turn pro build it on purpose. There was this day he walked in with a notebook that looked like it had survived a war. Pages bent, scribbles everywhere, random arrows pointing in all directions. Inside it were weeks of observations on a single pattern, just one. He tracked how it behaved in different market conditions, how it reacted during earnings season, how it failed when volume dried up, how it grew legs when volatility picked up. And when he finally traded that pattern with size, it wasn't luck. It was study, multiplied by patience. Special projects have a way of humbling you. They show you the parts of trading you've been ignoring, the details you thought didn't matter, the habits that were quietly costing you money. And facing those things isn't fun, but it's the difference between staying average and stepping into something sharper. You know that internal moment when you realize you can't keep winging it anymore? When you feel yourself outgrowing your own excuses? That's the doorway to these projects. They demand a version of you that's focused, curious, and willing to look at your flaws without flinching. At some point, this trader made a list, not a to-do list, more like a blueprint of the trader he wanted to become. Confident under pressure, precise with entries, patient when the market was messy, ruthless about risk. And then he reverse engineered it, one project at a time, one skill at a time. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fast, but it was real. And the results weren't loud, they were steady. His bad days got less chaotic. His good days became more consistent. His confidence didn't spike, it settled. Like a foundation finally setting after years of building. That's what special projects do. They take you from, I hope this works, to, I've done the work. They turn you into someone who doesn't just trade better, they think better. Somewhere along the way, you stop feeling like you're preparing for the market and start feeling like the market is finally something you're prepared for. Chapter 7. Prep. There's a strange calm that settles over a trading desk before the market opens. Not peaceful, more like the quiet before a starting gun. Screens glow, coffee cups crowd the table, and everyone is pretending they're relaxed when their minds are already sprinting. But the traders who last, really last, don't sprint into the day. They slow down. They prep. Prep isn't glamorous. It's not the part anyone posts screenshots of. It's the behind-the-scenes work that looks boring until you realize it's the only thing keeping you from emotional chaos. And the truth is, prep isn't just about building plans. It's about building stability. There was this trader who used to show up just minutes before the open. He'd roll in with his bag half unzipped, sit down, and try to feel the market as things started moving. It worked until it didn't. Until one morning, a massive gap up threw off every instinct he thought he had. His entries were late, his exits were anxious, and by the end of the day, he looked like he'd aged a year. After that, he changed everything. He started arriving early, quiet, focused, intentional. And over time, his trading transformed from frantic guessing into something almost meditative. Prep, when done right, creates that kind of shift. It removes the drama. It gives you clarity before the world gets noisy. Most people think prep is just charts and levels. But the deeper you go into trading, the more you realize prep is emotional work too. It's you asking yourself, how am I actually feeling today? Because some days you're sharp, and some days you're carrying a distraction you didn't notice. And those distractions show up in your trade's hesitation, revenge trading, fear masquerading as caution. There's something honest about acknowledging your internal state before you try to interpret the markets. The pros know this. They know the screen reflects you more than it reflects the world. One trader on the desk had this quiet routine. He never announced it. He didn't talk about it. But every morning, he'd sit with his journal and write one line. What do I want from the market today? If the answer was excitement, he wouldn't trade. If it was clarity, he'd trade small. If it was growth, he'd stick strictly to one or two setups. The line wasn't for the market, it was for himself. It grounded him. It stripped away the noise inside his own head. Prep is like tightening the bolts before you drive fast. You don't always feel the bolts, but you definitely feel it when they're loose. And then there's the market research, the kind that separates the casual from the committed. The traders who prep well don't stare at 100 tickers. They zoom in on a few with real potential. They look for catalysts, volume shifts, unusual behavior. They track how certain names react to specific events. They build context before they build trades. You know that feeling when you walk into a meeting completely unprepared and your confidence just evaporates? Markets amplify that 100 times. But prep fills the gaps before fear can slip through. It gives you a map before you step into the wilderness. Somewhere in the middle of all this, something subtle happens. The noise fades. The pressure eases. You feel ready, not because you've predicted the day, but because you've prepared yourself for it. You're not walking into the unknown blind. You're walking in with clarity, boundaries, and intention. And that's the real heart of prep. It's not about controlling the market. It's about controlling the part of you that meets the market. The moment traders understand that, the entire game shifts. They stop waking up trying to win. They wake up trying to be ready. And readiness, quiet, steady, unglamorous readiness, ends up being the edge that changes everything. Chapter 8. We are all Rudy. Every trading floor has that one person who reminds everyone of Rudy, the underdog who wasn't supposed to make it, but kept showing up anyway. Not because he had the best skills, not because he had some genius instinct, but because quitting never felt like an option. And in trading, that stubbornness, the quiet, almost unreasonable kind, ends up mattering more than people think. There was a trader everyone underestimated. Let's call him Rudy, because the name fits the spirit. He didn't come from a fancy background. He didn't speak in the polished, hyper-confident tone that some new traders put on like armor. He was awkward at first, unsure, made mistakes that were so messy you'd think he'd pack up and look for another career. But he didn't. He just kept showing up, day after day, like someone who didn't get the memo that he wasn't supposed to succeed. And the interesting thing? He was getting better. Slowly, painfully, quietly. The way people improve when they don't realize the whole room is watching. Rudy had this habit. He'd pull up a losing trade and stare at it like it was a puzzle he needed to solve. He didn't get emotional. He didn't beat himself up. He just studied it with this kind of patient curiosity that most new traders never develop. He wasn't trying to defend his choices. He was trying to understand them. That's a rare trait. It takes humility most people don't want to learn. You know that moment when you see someone who isn't naturally talented, but they work with this soft intensity that makes you root for them? That was him. You wanted him to win, even if you weren't sure he would. One day, during a tough market, Rudy made a call that surprised everyone. He sized down way down even though others were pushing harder. When someone asked him why, he shrugged and said, "I don't understand this market right now." No ego, no shame, just honesty. And that honesty saved him. While others got chopped up trying to force trades, he kept his account intact. It was a tiny moment, but it was also the moment people started taking him seriously. What most traders forget is that progress doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes it looks like a boring journal entry. Sometimes it looks like sitting out when others are jumping in. Sometimes it looks like taking a tiny win on a day when your confidence is fragile. And sometimes it looks like being the only person in the room who admits, "I'm still learning." There was this afternoon months later when everything just clicked for Rudy. He spotted a pattern he'd been studying for ages. He waited not because he was scared, but because he finally understood timing. When he entered, it wasn't a guess. It was recognition, familiar, comfortable, real. And when the trade worked beautifully, he didn't jump up or pound the desk. He just nodded to himself like, "Okay, maybe I belong here after all." That quiet nod might have been the biggest win of his career. Because that's the truth nobody tells you. The market doesn't require brilliance. It requires resilience. It doesn't need you to be a prodigy. It needs you to be persistent. You're not supposed to come in perfect. You're supposed to come in willing. And the craziest part? Every trader who makes it, every single one, has a little bit of Rudy in them. The doubt, the messy starts, the slow climb, the setbacks that make you question everything, the small breakthroughs that pull you forward, the stubborn belief that maybe, just maybe, you can grow into someone you've never been before. We're all walking around carrying a version of that story, some louder, some quieter. But the heart of it is the same. We are all Rudy. And the sooner a trader accepts that, the sooner they stop chasing talent and start building it. Chapter 9. Iceman. No goods, no glory. There's a certain kind of trader you notice without them ever trying to be noticed. Not because they talk big, but because they carry this quiet, almost chilling steadiness. That was Iceman. The guy who didn't flinch when the market got wild. The guy whose face looked the same on a huge win or a sharp loss. The guy everyone tried to figure out, wondering if he was born that calm or if he built himself that way. Most traders think courage in the market is loud, taking big shots, swinging hard, chasing glory. But Iceman had a different version of courage, a slower one, a colder one, the kind that comes from being brutally honest with yourself. Even when the truth stings, people thought he was fearless. He wasn't. He just knew how to cool the fear before it made decisions for him. There was this one morning when the whole desk felt tense. The market was gapping in every direction, headlines were flying, and you could practically hear anxiety humming under everyone's breath. But Iceman, he sat there with the same relaxed posture he had on the calmest days. One leg crossed, hand on the mouse, eyes soft, not strained. When the bell rang, traders all around him scrambled. Some chased, some hesitated, some froze. The usual chaos when emotions outrun logic. Iceman did none of that. He waited. He was the only person still as the market threw punches. And then, when the noise settled just a bit, he made one move, one trade, clean, precise, no hesitation. And the insane part? It wasn't a home run. It wasn't some heroic moment. It was a simple, disciplined trade, but it was the right one. And he managed it with this ice-calm confidence that made even experienced traders stop and think, how does he do that? It wasn't talent. It wasn't magic. It was emotional conditioning. Iceman had learned something early. The market isn't dangerous because it moves fast. It's dangerous because you move fast, because you react, because you feel something, fear, excitement, envy, and you act on it before you've even processed it. He told a younger trader once, "The market isn't trying to scare you, you're scaring yourself." And that line stuck because it felt uncomfortably true. You know that feeling when your heart speeds up but your mind slows down, like you're watching your own panic from the outside? That's the exact moment Iceman trained himself to breathe through. He didn't fight emotion that only makes it louder. He observed it, let it pass. And only then did he choose. There was a moment, months later, during a brutal downtrend, when a trader next to him lost control. One bad decision spiraled into 5, panic layered on panic. Iceman reached over and gently tapped the desk, almost like grounding him. "Step out," he said. Not harsh, not impatient, just steady. And the trader listened, because you listen to someone who looks unshaken when the world is shaking. People think courage comes from hype, but Iceman showed it comes from composure, from facing uncertainty without letting it shrink you. The deeper truth he lived by was simple. Bravery isn't about taking big risks. It's about taking clean risks. Risks you understand. Risks you can manage. Risks that come from clarity, not impulse. No guts, no glory wasn't some macho motto for him. It meant something quieter. You need the guts to stay patient when rushing feels easier, and the guts to step in when fear is begging you to stay on the sidelines. And that's what made him dangerous in the best possible way. Because when everyone else was melting under pressure, he stayed cold enough to think. And in the end, thinking clear, calm, steady thinking is where the real glory in trading comes from. Chapter 10. GMan. Trading is not easy. There's always that one trader who becomes the quiet reminder of how real this game is, not in a dramatic, motivational way, but in the raw, unfiltered sense that trading will test every soft corner you didn't know you had. That was GMan, the guy who didn't sugarcoat anything, the guy who'd look you straight in the eye and tell you the thing nobody wants to hear. Trading is not easy, and he said it without an ounce of bitterness, just truth. GMan walked like someone who'd been through storms you couldn't see, not shaken by them, but shaped by them. You could feel it in his presence. He wasn't trying to act tough. He didn't have to. There was a steadiness in him that only comes from walking through failure after failure and still deciding to show up the next morning. He never bragged. He never pretended he had it all figured out. If anything, he carried this subtle humility, like he understood just how quickly the market could humble anyone who got too comfortable. There was a young trader who once asked him, "When does this get easier?" And GMan didn't hesitate. He said, "It doesn't. You just get stronger." The room went quiet because everyone knew he wasn't being dramatic. He was being honest, brutally honest. And yet there was something strangely comforting in that honesty. Like he was giving people permission to stop pretending they were supposed to be perfect. One morning, during a rough stretch, GMan pulled up his own journal, a thick, beat-up thing held together with tape, and showed a trader a page filled with losses. Real losses. Not curated, not cleaned up, Just raw, unfiltered days where nothing worked. The trader stared at the page and looked confused. GMan smiled and said, "You think pros don't bleed? We bleed all the time. We just bleed with intention." He meant it. He didn't hide from his mistakes. He hunted them. He studied them. He used them as bricks to build the version of himself he needed to become. And that's the kind of work people don't see. The kind that never gets posted online. The kind that happens at midnight, with tired eyes and a screen full of trades that didn't go the way you wanted. You know that moment when you realize you've been carrying an expectation of yourself that's way heavier than it needs to be? That's what talking to GMan felt like. He made you breathe again. Made you realize the struggle wasn't proof you were failing, it was proof you were in the game. There was this one line he repeated often, almost like a mantra. If you can't suffer well, you can't trade well. And the older you get in this business, the more that line hits home. Because the market doesn't reward toughness, it rewards resilience. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. Somewhere along the way, GMan's presence taught people something deeper than entries or exits. He taught them how to respect the grind, how to respect themselves in the middle of uncertainty, how to stay grounded when the market tries to pull you out of your center. And when you finally understand that, trading stops feeling like a battle you're losing and starts feeling like a craft you're growing into. Slowly, honestly, imperfectly. If you've made it this far with me, take a moment, let your shoulders drop, let your breath settle. This journey, your journey, matters more than you admit. And if something in this story touched something in you, share it below. Talk to me. Talk to each other. Let's make this space real, human, alive. And if you want to stay on this path with me, you know what to do. Stick around, hype the video, subscribe if it feels right in your chest, not out of habit. Because we're building something here, not just a channel, but a place where growth actually feels human.